So through you, Deputy Mayor, whenever you're ready, I believe we have all of council here with the exception of the mayor.
You have to mute yourself, Deputy Mayor.
Okay. Welcome all of council and administration that I see present here, and thank you. Welcome to all our viewers out there on YouTube right now watching as well. So I'll call the meeting to order. We do not have a closed meeting report, Robert, correct?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. So any declaration of conflict of interest? I don't see any, so I'll move on. Adoption of the published agenda for this evening, the regular council meeting of October 19th, 2020. Moved by Councillor Bjorkman and supported by Councillor Vanderdolen.
Through you, Mr. Deputy
Oh,
Mayor.
sorry, yes. Do we have some additions?
Yeah, just two items where two notices of motion were brought to the clerk's office attention just before this meeting. And so we'd be looking to amend the published agenda to add items 15.2 and 15.3. Those notices of motion will be presented at that part of the agenda.
Okay, thank you. Is that good with the mover and seconder? Good? Good with the seconder? Okay, so I'll ask the question then. All in favor of moving the agenda? And that's carried, thank you. I need an adoption of the minutes, regular council meeting from October the 6th. Moved by Councillor Bowman, supported by Councillor Guerin. Any questions on the minutes? All in favor? That's carried, thank you. I need a motion for the special council meeting minutes from September the 8th. Adopted as circulated. Moved by Councillor Guerin and supported by Councillor Verbeek. Any questions on those minutes? All in favor then? That's carried, thank you. We have one public presentation this evening, and that's by Claire Sanders, and she's a climate change specialist. Thank you, Claire, for being here this evening to present.
Thank you so much, Deputy Mayor. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you very well.
Great, thank you. I'm really pleased to be able to speak with you this evening about the Regional Energy Plan. And I know yourself, Deputy Mayor, and Councillor Vanderdolen have heard a little bit about what we've been doing with the Energy Plan, either at the IRCA board level or through County Council. So I'm going to keep things really short this evening, and this is just to bring sort of everybody else up to speed. But I'm providing lots of resources, and if there's any time more information requested, you can get in touch with me at IRCA. And then Rebecca Belanger is the Manager of Planning Services at the County of Essex, who is facilitating the project for the County of Essex. And she, I think, is actually watching tonight, I think. So next page, please. So right now we're really seeing two global crises coming together. We're seeing coronavirus recovery, which requires employment and sustained economic development, and the climate crisis that requires urgent restructuring of energy efficiency and supply at the community level in order to be carbon free by 2050. And so those are the federal targets. And, you know, I think the Canadian government right now is recognizing the value in tying these two imperatives together. We're seeing that from the speech from the throne that includes support for housing and retrofits and green projects. So the first step in I think our community being competitive on some of those funding initiatives is this regional energy plan. It's really the first step in being prepared for a potential alignment. So next slide, please. So typically this kind of project takes a full 2 years to be implemented. But because we've seen we started it just pre-COVID, and then really seeing the opportunities for potential funding, as well as the urgent climate crisis, we decided to really speed up the project. And so we're hoping to be done within 14 months by March of 2021. And I'm going to describe a little bit about our process and how the analytical process really leads the engagement process. We're ensuring that we've got a robust data and analytics to support the engagement going forward. So next slide, please. And we knew really from the beginning of this project that, the climate issues are very multidisciplinary. They cross every department in every municipality, as does energy issues. So we knew that there had to be a multidisciplinary development of this plan, as well as agreement on goals, and it needed to align with existing land use and economic development, as well as other plans. We also recognize the importance of political approval, and with 7 municipalities working on this, the same energy plan, that's why I wanted to come and speak with you tonight, just to ensure that we do have that approval and support across the board, which will help lead to a seamless pathway to implementation. So this project actually started with Ministry of Energy funding, and then that was matched by funding from the county. And then each municipality has also contributed a little bit of funding. So really this plan is supposed to become a layer within community planning, and it doesn't become a chapter that can be put on a shelf. It really needs to be embedded within existing plans. So next slide, please. So we took each of the municipalities as their own planning districts, and we are using the same consultants that the City of Windsor used. So it really reduced the costs for the project because the analytical pieces were already in place and tools. And the City of Windsor completed their energy plan in 2016. So we're really building together sort of a new plan for the region together. So next slide, please. And just to talk a little bit about those analytics, in order to ensure that we have really robust data to rely on, we used MPAC data to characterize properties. So we characterize A1000 lots within the region. And so we're essentially making archetypes, and that's what these pictures are on the side. So everything from single unit housing to multi-unit to greenhouses to industrial. And we place those into 5 age bands. So the older ones are likely less energy efficient. And then size based on size. And then we can computer model those and to their end uses of heating, cooling, lighting, ventilation, process, and water. So we matched those with the utility data that we got from Essex Power, ELK, Enbridge, Hydro One, and we were able to build these models of energy use across the region. So next slide. And then the transportation is a little bit challenging as well because the data is less robust. But we use things like journeys through the region, modal mix. So, are people driving single vehicles? Are they walking, cycling? The type of vehicle they're driving, the trip length they use, vehicle fuel, all of those kinds of things. And we incorporate those into the models as well. So we've got a really robust amount of data and analytics to rely on. So really what I'm presenting this evening is the data. There's really no judgment behind it. It's just the data. It's how we use energy in this region. Next slide, please. So our vision, this is still provisional because we're working with a number of stakeholders and we're also getting public input. But this is an example of our strategic framework. So our goal is to create a sustainable energy system that meets the needs of the present and the future, and one that balances the environment with economics, social and cultural needs of the region. We want to respect the science and work towards climate neutrality, which is in line with both federal and provincial policy. And we want to test strategies against best global practices to ensure that we are cost competitive with other regions. and ensure that all energy-related investments have acceptable risk returns. So, really looking at that with the economic lens as well. And we want to create high quality employment as well. So next slide, please. And so in order to do this, we have a really robust, I use the word robust too much, really broad group of representatives on our task force. And so these are, again, our utilities, renewable energy providers, but also large users like Leamington Hospital, or we've got Ontario Greenhouse and Vegetable Growers on there, youth representatives. So really broad task force that will help us to really ensure that we're getting engagement across all sectors. Next slide, please. We've planned a number of regional engagement activities. So at the core is a project work team, and that consists mostly of the County of Essex, infrastructure, planning departments, but also economic development and greenhouses as well through OGVG. And then that regional task force that I just showed you is it's nested, or I guess the project work team is nested within that task force. And then we're receiving strategic direction and approval from council, but we want to ensure that, of course, municipal staff and targeted networks are all brought along in the process, and that we're also receiving broad feedback on priorities, vision, principles, and strategies. So we'll also be doing quite a bit of public engagement as well. And we just finished a public survey to get input on those visions, the vision statement, and strategic framework. Next slide, please. So these goals are still provisional as we're just sort of looking at that feedback that we received from the survey. So, but we've nested them under 3 different sort of categories there. So environment, in terms of greenhouse gases, we want to, by 2041, which is our planning horizon, reduce absolute greenhouse gas emissions by 60% and achieve net zero by 2050. So that's in line with that federal target. In terms of economic development, we want to return about $15 billion to the local economy. And I'll talk a little bit more about repatriating those dollars. And we want to create at least 1,000 jobs by 2025. And we want to ensure that our energy efficiency and reliability of our systems is as good as it is now, the reliability, and that we improve efficiency by 50%. And these goals are all relative to the 2019 baseline. So that's the energy data that we got. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to give you the data as we see it so far, which is sort of where we're at. I'll give you this. There's a whole pile of pie charts now, but I'll try to sum them up at the very end just quickly. So next slide, please. So this is the source energy usage by sector in the county. So these are all excluding the city of Windsor. This is just the County of Essex. So out of all of the energy that's used in the region, which is 52 terajoules per year, 38% of that is used by greenhouses, which is indicative of a successful sector. Transportation, 20%, and residential, 22%. Industrial, commercial, and institutional, ICI, account for about 20% as well of that amount of energy used in the region. So if you go to the next slide. So this one is a little bit more challenging, but you can see the very first slice there is 2019. And if we project forward to 2041 and then 2050, based on population growth and industry growth that we're expecting, the energy use will also increase as well. So those are those slices of pie, and it's going to increase over time. That's all that this one is saying, up to about 61 terajoules by 2041. Next slide, please. So if you take that 52 terajoules per year and you break it down by the source of energy, over half of that is natural gas, and 26% is electricity. The rest are vehicle fuels. Fortunately, in Ontario, our electricity grid is very clean. Our natural gas, not so much. So really if we're looking at trying to reduce greenhouse gases, we want to make those slices of pie smaller for natural gas or the vehicle fuels. But if you go to the next slide, this is energy cost by sector. So just like when you open your Enbridge bill and you're like, oh, great, that's $40 to heat my house this month. If you open your hydro bill, it's a lot more expensive. So it's, maybe over $100 for energy in your house to turn your lights on and whatnot. So we know that we can't just tell everybody just to use electricity to heat their houses, obviously, because it would drive the price up and it wouldn't make us a particularly competitive region. So if you're looking at energy cost by sector, transportation, so gasoline and diesel is about 40% of the cost that leaves the region, and residential is 27%. So it's just another way to look at this through another lens. And really, out of all of the money spent in the region, $820 million leaves the region each year in cost of energy. So it's things like filling your tank. That money doesn't stay locally. That goes out to refineries or elsewhere. Hydro One, all of our energy is mostly generated off outside the region. So that's $4,300 per person that was spent last year that leaves the region. So really what we want to look at is how to keep that money in the region and repatriate those dollars. So next slide. And so if we take that again, here's another graph. If we take that from 2019, that $820 million, and we project it forward based on cost risk, we're looking at an increase in cost from 820 million to 1.9 billion by 2041. The amount of money that leaves the region spent on these particular energy costs. And that's at the lower price risk. So if you go to the next slide, we're looking at a cost risk of $3.1 billion by 2041. So anywhere from 200% to 500% increase in cost of these energy types. So, just like we talk about bending that COVID curve, we need to sort of do the same in this region with our energy costs, right? In order to bend that curve and keep those dollars locally and keep them in people's pockets. So next slide, please. And finally, if we get to greenhouse gas emissions by sector, for the 2019 baseline, the region as a whole emitted 2.2 million metric tons per year of greenhouse gases. 40% of those come from the greenhouse sector, 29% from transportation, 15% from residential. So quite a broad slice of the pie for each sector. Interestingly, I just saw the ours combined with Windsor's. And because we don't have if you look at the industrial sector or commercial sector coming out of Windsor, it actually is, it's quite evenly divided across all sectors when you include the City of Windsor's data as well. So next slide, please. If you look at this across, we call it global benchmarking, so across the Canadian average and the Ontario average, and then you look to the best comparable practice, and oftentimes these are in Europe, somewhere in Europe, we can see that we are above best comparable practice. And so those best practices aren't unattainable. It's not using new technology. These are all practices that are attainable. And per capita, we're 5 times what best global practice is. So just to sum up on the next slide, for our 2019 baselines, energy intensity in homes and buildings is more than twice global practice, best global practice. Energy efficiency is lower than most global systems. I didn't talk too much about home water use, but we're about Canadian average. And in terms of our greenhouse gas emissions, we're about 5 times best practice. If you take the greenhouse sector out, we're about 3 times best practice. And transportation and greenhouses together are 70% of all emissions. And really overall, most of that $820 million energy value leaves the county and your pocket And we're looking at a cost risk of anywhere from 200 to 500% by 2050. So as our consultants say, there are significant opportunities here. These are all opportunities to not only keep money in our pocket, but reduce greenhouse gases as well. And so if you go to the next slide, our next steps with this project are to look at integrated simulations. So there isn't just one magic bullet for any of these things, but this is what other communities are looking at. So making buildings more efficient and homes more efficient. Programs where you can do deep energy retrofits, efficient vehicles, things like biofuels. Can we use, a lot of our agricultural things that are coming out of greenhouses, as well as organics for biofuels. So lots of things to think about. And now we're taking all of these many solutions, and we're putting them through those models to determine what our next steps are. Next slide. So if you're interested in more information, the County of Essex has a website, countyofessex.ca/REP, with a lot of this information. We need to update it now with some of these figures. And I also have background reports and all of this information if anybody is interested. And I think that's all I have for you today. So you can go to the next slide, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Claire. That was very interesting. And looking to see if there's any questions from any members of council. Councillor Bjorkman.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Saunders, for the presentation. I think one of a good takeaway from that, I mean, everybody's, we're almost overwhelmed with climate and adaptation and what we need to have. But it's always good to have that carrot for people, and I think that that $820 million going out is something that should really grab our attention and say to us, how do we make that stay here? What are the steps that we can take? And it really does, bring it down to something we can relate to with things leaving our pockets. So it's a great way to break that down to us to a personal level of what we can do to improve our lot and be rewarded for it. So lots of food for thought here. It's a good report. I enjoyed reading it, and I'm sure we'll be using it as we come up to our budgeting area. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor Bjorkman. Councillor Verbeek.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yep, just briefly, I echo what Councillor Bjorkman said, but thank you for the report. And it shows us we've got a long way to go, right? There's lots of work to do. But again, I appreciate this angle. For the people that we can't get the buy-in about the significance and the importance of doing this for the environmental reasons, the significant opportunities to keep money here and the potential for the huge expenditures will help get a full buy-in for people that aren't 100% on board for just doing it because of environmental reasons. Thank you.
Any other council members that have questions for Ms. Saunders? Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I know that this year has been unique with COVID, and the Leamington to Windsor bus seemed to be doing really well before this. But now I've been in Essex a couple of times a week, and I see the bus go by, and it looks almost empty. So that's something that I hope the mayors, the deputy mayors and councillors are putting on their radar to somehow re-stimulate the interest in that regional transportation. Because when that first came out, the residents in Harrow, McGregor, Colchester were saying, we would like to have regional transportation too, but if we can't get the Leamington to Windsor bus back up and full, I don't see an expansion coming. So unique year. Another thing I'd really like to see as a mom with little kids all the time is, I think one of the things that we can do as a municipality is take our zoning bylaw and look at all of the green areas and somehow calculate a percentage of how much area the town of Essex has that is green, and how can we improve that? Being at the parks and the splash pads this summer, we need more trees there. It is hot. And so I think that that's a small thing that we can do as a municipality too. So I look forward to being a team player in this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bondi. Any further comments or questions from council members? Councillor Bjorkman, did you have another question?
Nope, I'll just make a motion to receive the report.
Okay, supported by Councillor Bowman. And I just had one comment before we vote on that. So I'm looking at gas and electricity as two of the items that we use for energy, for heating and cooling and so on. So I'm guessing the only other alternative would be solar or thermal heating and cooling. Is that the direction that we're trying to move in with businesses, greenhouses, residential?
Sure. So if I may respond, Deputy
Please.
Mayor. So part of it is absolutely is moving in the direction of renewables. Again, it's a smorgasbord. It's not a buffet, right? You have to pick from all of those solutions. So improving energy efficiency and ensuring things like proper doors and windows and insulation in everybody's houses. So keeping those, the energy in or down. And then, yes, absolutely moving towards renewables or things like biofuels, injected biogas injected into the Enbridge pipeline, those kinds of things. We're looking at really all of the potential solutions. But those are, yes, absolutely some of them.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So with that, I'll ask everyone in favor of moving the report. And that's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Claire, for coming out this evening. On to the next order of business. We have reports from administration. First one is 8.1 Economic Development Report 2020, Building Development Overview for September of 2020. Councillor Bondi, moving. Supported by Councillor Bowman. Any questions on our on the report that's presented? Councillor Van der Dolen.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Meloche. Through you, I've had a complaint from a constituent who's been trying to get a permit for its minor permit for a shed, and it's been held up. And apparently, it's been held up at IRCA for various complex reasons. But that made me think. Well, first of all, this project was held up because there were backups at IRCA for permit approval, as we know, and this is a very minor project. But it made me think: how many other projects are in the pipeline that are backed up? Do we know this? Part of this was because of the work from home, the COVID issue, and then of course IRCA had its financial crisis that just diverted its attention for quite a long time. But there must be a whole bunch of permits backed up in the system for a whole bunch of things. I just wonder if our building department or our development people can tell us how many of those projects there are and what they're worth. Thanks.
Thanks for the question, Chris. I would imagine Mr. Gerard, our Director of Infrastructure Services, could help us out. No?
Through your Deputy Mayor, it'll be Director Chadwick.
Oh, I'm sorry, Director Chadwick, yes.
Good evening, Council. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you, Lori.
Okay, thank you for the question for you, Deputy Mayor, to Councillor Van der Dolen. The stats I don't have offhand exactly. However, I can share with you that our building division is quite on top of receiving and processing permits. There is a mandate once a permit application is received and hand it to the CBO or the building inspector for plan review, the clock starts. And so that mandate through the province is no more than 10 days for a residential permit, and also some other, the more complex the structure, the longer the time for issuing those permits. When there are instances that are beyond the town of Essex, such as IRCA, for example, if there is a consultation or if the permit requires input from IRCA, there may be a delay in issuing those permits. I urge you as councillors to please encourage residents and builders and contractors to contact the town of Essex Building Division through my department. You can call me directly as well, and we can look into those matters. We are quite ahead in issuing those permits. If there is any concern with any residents, there may be something that's beyond our control.
Thank you, Ms. Chadwick. I'm aware that the town is caught up, and I wasn't at all questioning the town. The delay I was talking about today was entirely in IRCA's court. I was just wondering how many are delayed at IRCA's level, because that appears to be the bottleneck, and that appears to be where the solution would be, not at the town. I know about the 10 days and all that. So I wonder how many of our projects are hung up because of IRCA and because of the problems that, or shortages or whatever's going on there. And maybe there's something we can do about it. Maybe there's some sort of solution we can offer.
We could look into that certainly and try to provide you the context behind the response. Again, the numbers offhand, I'm not sure. What we try to do as well is to say that maybe we will issue that permit from the town and then have that resident or contractor proceed with the next step at IRCA. So there actually is no, need for us for the resident to come back to Essex. So it could be just we're trying to streamline things for the resident. But I'll see what I can send you through email, and of course, copy the rest of council.
Thanks, Ms. Chadwick. Oh, Councillor Guerin, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Malash. So question on the development overview. I'm not overly concerned about the fact that it's down 60% from last September, because I think we're still 2 times more on this date compared to 16, 17, and 18. I'm just wondering if you can refresh our memory, anyone, of what we did back in September 2019. That was there one large project that we did, or was there numerous projects? I'm just trying to understand the significant drop. And I got another follow-up to that as well.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, to Councillor Guerin. We did look at the data, and it was surprising, and we did look into what happened, and the response really is a mix of a boom last year this time, or rather in the summer of last year, and catching up into that kind of construction phase in September of 2019. I can actually look at the actuals and dig a little bit deeper. It could have been just a record year. A record month, rather.
Okay, thank you. And then just to follow up to that, through you again, Deputy Mayor Malash, on the actual reports. So I'm noticing on the commercial and industrial values, January to September 2019, 2.7 million. And then January, September 2020 this year, 16.5 million roughly. So that's about a 13.7 million swing. I know it can't be answered tonight, but I'd like to know if administration come back with what the impact of that money will have on our taxes and our bottom line. I know that we get a lot more money on the commercial industrial end, and without knowing the mix of the construction and what wards they were in, there's different rates that apply to them, but it'd be nice to know. That's a significant amount of money, and I'm hoping it has a considerable impact on our budget. So if we can get anything back from administration in the upcoming weeks, even prior to budget, that'd be helpful. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Vanderdolen. Councillor Verbeek, did you have your hand up? No? I know I've seen another hand. I just can't. Oh, Councillor Bondy, sorry. Councillor Bondy.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. When IRCA comes to council and gives their budget presentation, they usually go over the highs and lows with how fast they turn over permits. So that is something I'm also interested in. I've heard permit complaints, but not so much IRCA. I'm hearing the town of Essex backlog with permit complaints. And I have a resident, one particular resident that rings a bell on the 4th concession now. I have probably sent 5 and 6 emails to town staff to call him back because he hasn't got an answer for over a month. And he's not sleeping at night because of what he's been told by our operations department. So I'm not hearing the IRCA delays. I'm wondering if part of our service review can be efficiencies for the building department. For example, residents go in, they say, I need a permit for a shed, which a permit for a shed, unless it's in a low-lying water area, which it could be, I don't think every time they need to go to IRCA, it could be corrected. But, you know, if it's a simple permit, like a fence or a shed, a resident can get a number, and it's a tracking number. And then if they have issues, they can give that tracking number to their counselors to follow up, because I've had multiple calls this summer from basically all over the municipality saying, my permit's backed up. I took this week off of work to do my, the building department told me 2-week turnaround. I took this week off work based on what I was told. I'm going to take this week off of work, and I have all my wood sitting outside, and I can't build. And these are crisis situations for our residents. And it's just not once that it's happened. And I did have a talk with Ms. Chadwick about this, and it did come up in the service delivery review, the shared service delivery review, that, perhaps we need that part-time or on-call a building official to approve this when other staff members aren't there. So I think we need a system for efficiencies at the building department. When residents go in, they get a number, just like how we do it for Essex Works or report a problem. Residents get a number. And then if counselors have to come in and say, hey, Billy Bob has been waiting 3-4 weeks for a simple fence permit. Okay, maybe that is too long, but Billy Bob, now it's gone to IRCA, it's gone here. So residents have an expectation, and we're followed through, because my time is important too. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bondi. CEO Nepsy.
Yeah, through your worship, I'm going to let Director Morrison answer Councillor Guerin's question, I think, or at least speak to the question on the finances, but I didn't want to talk, if you'll let me, responding a little bit to Councillor Bondi's comments on permit and permit issues. If you're okay with that, Deputy Mayor?
Please.
With respect to taking a number and permits and permit issues, we all know that this summer was extraordinary in terms of permits and home renovations and COVID and whatnot. My suggestion to, I believe, Councillor Bondi, Billy Bob, I guess, with respect to, we can use Essex Works to be able to track it as well. So as opposed to having several systems out there, the building department does track their permits. I think if any resident has any issue, whether it's with respect to the permit application process or pothole, I would suggest that they contact the Essex Works and take it that way. And that's something that we can track. That's a system that's already in place. So let's use what we have. As you'll see later on tonight, it's working. We're working out some of the kinks. That service delivery, that customer review is in our strategic plan. You've heard me talk about it. I've heard you talk about it. That's something we're working on as well, as far as those policies on customer service. So I think those tools are in place, and we're working to better those tools. So I would suggest, as far as that incident goes, to be able to move forward that way. So I'll hand it over to Director Morrison to speak to Councillor Guerin's comments on the finance.
Mr. Morrison.
So commercial is assessed differently. $16 million, a construction value doesn't necessarily translate into $16 million into assessment value. So there's different models that's used for commercial, one of them being the income model. Additionally, council made the decision to waive development charges on commercial and industrial So really, to receive the benefit of that additional assessment, it will be 4 to 5 years out. Thank you.
Thank you for that explanation. Councillor Guerin?
So, no immediate impact on our budget likely with this increased construction of nearly 13.7 million. And then possibly 4 or 5 years out is when we'll start to realize some revenue in terms of taxation from that. Is that what I'm hearing?
Through the chair, yes. We have something to look forward to.
Thank you, Councillor Guerin. Any further questions on the economic development portion of this report? Okay, so I need a motion to receive the report.
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, we have Councillor Bondi moving, seconded by Councillor Bowman.
Okay, thank you very much. So all in favor of the motion? And that's carried, thank you. We're on to drainage report 8.2, drainage report 2020-11. Looking for an appointment of an engineer under section 78 of the Drainage Act to replace the bridge on the 1011 side road drain. Moved by Councillor Bjorkman, supported by Councillor Bowman. Any questions on this report? I see none, so all in favor? That's carried, thank you. Next is 8.3, Drainage Report 2020-12, the abandonment of the top end of the Hamlin Drain. And with that is a bylaw 1958 that will be passed. Looking for direction from council. Moved by Councillor Verbeek, supported by Councillor Bjorkman. Any discussion, any questions? I see none, so all in favor of that motion? And that's for bylaw 1958 as well. Thank you. Next, another drainage report, 8.4 on our docket. Drainage report 2020-13 in regard to results of the request for tender for the 5th concession road bank repairs on the Richmond Drain. Looking for direction from council here. Moved by Councillor Bowman and supported by Councillor Guerin. Any questions on this particular report? Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I watched the tender openings, and it was pretty fun to see the range and the prices where one contractor came in like over double. So it's just proof that we do see a lot of variances. Just through you to our Director of Finance, or maybe our Director of Infrastructure, what was our budget on this? Again, please.
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, the budget for this and the approved capital budget was $275,000.
Good, Councillor. Councillor Vanderdolen.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Meloche. Through you to staff, could we have a start date, a complete date on this project? And I'd like to know if there's going to be a barrier between the new embankment and the road.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, there will be no barrier included as part of the design. There would have been a significant increase in cost to do something of that nature. We don't have a specific start time and end time at this moment. First, we'll have to award the project if the council wishes to do so. Following that, we'll meet with the contractor for a pre-construction meeting, and I can update council at that time.
Thanks. I think people want to know. I mean, those of us who use that road regularly are interested in the project, and we'd like to know when it'll start and finish. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Vanderbilt, and thank you, Director Gerard. CAO Nepsy, did you have a question there? Were you just letting me know I was on mute?
No, thank you. I didn't notice that, but that's good. I made my gesture anyways. No, I was just, because we're together here, I was actually trying to motion to Director Gerard, and just, it does depend on, I had asked him if potentially it was going to be this year, and he noted, he just reinforced to me that it really depends on the contractor, and that he will, like he said, he will let council know once he knows.
Thank you very much. Any further questions on this report? All in favor of the motion? And that is carried. Thank you. Next up is Communications Report 2020-02. We're going to get an update on Essex Work Systems, and I'm going to go to Mr. Denonville, our Manager of Communications.
We can't hear you, Alex.
Not yet.
How about this?
Good.
So what I said was I can't promise I'll be more exciting than our bi-weekly tender openings, but I'll try my best. This is Council's first update on our the Essex Works reporter problem system. As you may recall, the system was launched in March of this year, and a few things have happened since then. The setup of the system was part of the Provincial Modernization Grant, which called for municipalities to adapt their operations and use technology to become more efficient. It's also a direct response to some of the action items and strategic priorities identified in the 2019 to 2022 Corporate Strategic Plan, in particular, improving access to information and improving the experiences of individuals as customers and citizens in their interactions with the town. In sum, we received 72 submissions between March 2nd and September 16th. And as you can see on the attached graphic, the submissions are broken down in both the report and the graphic. On average, town staff completed work related to submissions in 7 days, with more than half of the submissions being addressed in 3 days or less. Similarly, submitters were notified within 2 weeks on average, with more than 60% being notified in 2 weeks, in 14 days or less. As the report notes, there are some differences in how some of the submissions are handled. For example, property standards, they tend to take a little bit longer to go from submission to close because of the nature of the jobs that our bylaw enforcement team members do. They need to visit the property, they need to investigate, and so that kind of tends to extend the length of response time. So just something for consideration in terms of the overall data. As the report also notes, we've identified and addressed some of the hurdles in implementation and operation. We continue to look to improve this system and our citizens' interactions with the town as a whole. In particular, I think we're going to aim to get those notification numbers down, so reduce the time that it takes for us to notify citizens. Looking ahead, the next update on the system is slated for December of this year, which will capture submissions from September to November. And we'll continue to work internally with the adoption of a new procedure to guide staff in how they use the system. We're also working on some new signage for our parks and facilities. We had an issue most recently, some vandalism at a local park. Someone was reaching out to a local Facebook group and they were looking for, how do I get this reported? So we've already done it in Colchester Beach and Park and the Harbor with our new signage. So that's something that we're looking to implement across the community. In sum, thank you for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions tonight, as I'm also the admin contact for the town. If citizens or residents have any questions, feel free to reach out to me at Town Hall. My extension's 1120 for anyone watching right now or going to be watching later. We do want to improve the system, so any feedback is greatly appreciated. And I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Denonville. That was awesome. Councillor Guerin.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Meloche. Through you to Alex. Alex, great report. I think our residents are going to like seeing this if you're planning on doing it on a 4 times a year basis, that'd be awesome. You spoke about the next report being December, and capturing September to December, I'm assuming that you'll be posting comparables as we go on and not just posting the actual 3-month period. Is that correct?
Yeah, so through the chair, I would imagine we'd be comparing, the previous period. This period is 6 months, but we're going to start comparing 3-month periods. So that would be change over time. And again, obviously, we'll be looking to improve those numbers, but that's definitely something that we'll look into incorporating into our analysis.
Okay, awesome. In addition to that, I just noticed on the pie graph, other, only because it's such a big section, that gray under other. Can you give us some examples of what would fall under other, and is some of those things under other important to maybe pull out and put in their own category, or do you see us cleaning up the others as we move forward? Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Through the chair, it's a really great point. So we tried to keep the categories as comprehensive as possible, which is, I think the system, the feedback that we're getting from the system will inform how we modify the system in the future. So one of the examples from the other/unsure category, probably say maybe 30 to 40% are hazard trees. So hazard trees, I've got a tree in my property, it's on town property or it's in the right of way, and I want to get somebody to look at it. That was a really common problem that fell under the other/unsure category. So we're just going to add that as a category. So instead of me taking in the complaint about the tree and forwarding it to Public Works Operations, it can just go straight there. So that should reduce some of the friction as well.
Thank you. Councillor Bjorkman.
Thank you. Through you, Deputy Mayor, to Mr. Denonville. That's a really good report. I think it's a great tool. That the pie chart is just so easy to look at. It's so user-friendly for any one of our residents to have a look at and understand what it is that's happening in the town, where our issues are at, and then being able to track response times. Let's go back to the conversation we had earlier about building permits. It's one of those things that people want to feel that they're being heard and somebody's responding to them as soon as possible. So that's just, to me, that those are the great items to call out, have there for residents to see and use. So I really like it. It's a great report. I look forward to us using it as a tool in the future. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bjorkman. Anyone else with questions? Councillor Bondy.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Meloche. What I really liked about this report is that it came to us without us having to ask for it. It was like a really proactive update. So thank you to our communications department for that. It's really good to know how this is going. This is really good. I'm really excited for this. I've been pushing residents to it. I've done some myself, right? And so one of the things I'm seeing is I really want to look into that street light with Elk, because my street light in front of my house has been out for a long time now. And I did speak with Mr. Gerard about it, but it is out for a while, right? So can Elk Utility keep up with the street light requests is one question I think we need to track. I'm also surprised that only 72 residents have done it. So I think we need to still push it out a lot. So I'm not sure if I don't know, Mr. Denonville, if we're getting like a QR code or more literature with this to keep pushing it out, because I would love to have a flyer and go door to door with Harrow with this flyer, so that I'm not the go-to person for every tree or sidewalk. So I love it. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bondy. Any other comments? Mr. Denonville?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Just on that point through the chair. Yeah, that was, we kind of had that conversation, Elk is a separate corporation, but how do we make sure that the submissions that are pointed to them are addressed? So we're going to be doing I believe it's a monthly report, just to give them, here's a summary of everything that we've received, and definitely incorporating the link to the reporter problem as into all of our communication. So right now, if somebody reaches out to our Facebook page, it will reply automatically to say, do you want to report a problem? And here's the process to go through. on our signage as well. And then we're also creating the just a more general inquiries business card that would include that information. So more general information. I think it's just part of the broader package of improving customer service in the town, which is obviously priority for council and administration.
Thank you, Mr. Denonville. And I would imagine for streetlights, the same thing would go with Ontario Hydro for rural residents. Perfect. Any further questions? If no further questions, then I'll take a motion then. Thank you, Mr. Denonville. And I'll take a motion to receive the report. Moved by Councillor Bjorkman, supported by Councillor Guerin. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next up, we news item 10, County Council update. We don't really have anything that's, it's just normal operational reports with regard to Essex Windsor solid waste and so on. So I don't really have anything that would be interesting to share with anyone. So we'll move on to 11, correspondence. We have 3 items that are correspondence just to be received unless someone wants to pull any one of these items out. We'll pass all 3 items at the same time. Can I get a mover and a supporter? Moved by Councillor Guerin, supported by Councillor Bowman. Councillor Bondy.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Balash. That AMCTO advisory update, I don't really understand what they're asking. Something to do with the election list, the register. So I don't know if somebody can explain that, it'd be great. I mean, I'll support it anyway, but I don't know what we're supporting. And the resident from Mr. Rocher in Ward 3, just want to validate that I read it. There are some residents out there that have a different opinions, and they're free to write to council. So just encouraging residents to write to council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bondy. Going back to the AMCTO, Mr. Roger, would you be able to take an attempt at that one?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. My understanding is that they're looking to, as far as responsibilities for voters lists and the management of the voters list, I believe in 2024, they're looking to bring that under the auspices of Elections Ontario. Right now, it's voters lists are basically updated at the municipal level based on information provided from MPAC. And so the general feeling is that moving this under Elections Ontario will hopefully lead to a more up-to-date and more accurate voters list. But my understanding is that that's not going to happen until 2024. So and from that point on forward.
Thank you, Mr. Roger. Any further questions? So the motion is to receive these 3 items. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Next item is 11.2, correspondence to be considered for receipt and support. We have 2 items. The first one's 11.2.1, letter from Lake of Bays in regard to reform to the municipal insurance policy. What's the desire of council on that one? Councillor Bjorkman, you moving? I think you're still on mute. Oh.
To receive and support.
Receive and support. Thank you. Moved and supported by Councillor Bondy. Councillor Verbeek, do you have a question? No. Okay, all in favor of that? That's carried. Thank you. And next we have 11.2.2, Township of Ashfoldal, Norwood. I bet you guys didn't think I could say that. Cannabis production. And there's correspondence here. Hopefully everyone's had an opportunity to explore that. And what's your direction from council here? Councillor Vanderdolen moving. Receive and support. Yes. Seconder to receive and support, Councillor Bowman. Any comments or questions? I know we have issues right in our own community, so that's good that we're receiving and supporting that. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Next up is item 12. It's committee of meeting minutes. And first up is, I guess we can receive all of these meeting minutes at the same time, unless someone wants to pull one of these out. But the first one's 12.1, the Essex Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting minutes from September 25th. And we also have Essex Police Services. Now I'm going to go back and I'm just going to say we're going to take a motion on 12.1 because there is a recommendation to council. And that is in regard to stone walkways be laid throughout the homestead. Paved or packed. So I'll go to council to get some direction on that. Councillor Bjorkman, moving.
And supporting.
And supporting, thank you. And Councillor Verbeek had her hand up, so Councillor Verbeek is supporting. Any questions from any council members? It's pretty straightforward. It's a nice idea. So all in favor of that motion? That's carried unanimously. Next up, we have Essex Police Services Board's minutes from May the 7th, 2020, as well as September 3rd, 2020. Moved by Councillor Verbeek.
No.
Okay. Councillor Verbeek, you have a comment?
Yeah, yes, please. And through you, Deputy Mayor, I was waving my hand. I didn't want to move on from the accessibility report.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Question for our
Yes.
council on that committee. There was a request for youth member to sit on their committee, and I'm just wondering if that our young counselors have been approached to apply. It says there's an application that should be submitted, and I'm wondering if that's been offered to our youth counselors.
Councillor Bondi?
I guess thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Deputy Mayor Malash, I will find out. I will ask Ms. Verbeek. I do not know. I do know that one of our youth members wants to take a step back a little bit. So we'll see. It's a busy time for them too, but I will ask.
Director Sweet?
Deputy Mayor. Yes, that application is for provincial, it's not for the town. They also discussed having the students work on a separate project. So that application is for provincial grant. If that one of the students may be interested.
Oh, thank you. Councillor Bowman?
Referring back to the previous items that we're looking at, I think there was a second recommendation there to be made as well. Recommendation to council to send a letter to county council.
Yes, and that will be, since we moved the motion, that will happen as well. I just didn't read it. But
Okay.
recommendation to council, that council support a letter being sent to the County of Essex.
That's fine. Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay. On the Essex Police Services Board meeting minutes from May 7th and September 3rd of 2020. A mover? Councillor Guerin, supported by Councillor Verbeek. Any questions on those minutes? Kim, did you have a comment? Councillor Verbeek? Okay. All in favor of carrying those minutes or passing those minutes? Carried unanimously. Next up, financial, 13.1 on our agenda. 2020 capital variance as of August 31st, 2020. And for this, before we make a motion, we're going to go to Jeff Morrison to hear some summary of a report. Jeff, Mr. Morrison.
Through the chair, my computer froze, so I can't be on screen. I apologize for that. So
Difficult to hear you, Jeff.
my computer froze, so I can't be on screen. So I apologize for that. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
So I'd like to thank the very talented finance group who have worked diligently to develop this document. The capital variance reporting was first introduced by finance in 2014 and remained unchanged until 2019. However, we looked at the document and realized that it wasn't providing as much value as we would like. So in discussions with the CAO, we assessed it and identified that we wanted to add value and who was the audience. So we chose to expand the report to include procurement and council resolution information, status info, and percentage complete. This document follows the same format and layout as the capital budget as approved in the 2020 budget. So it's familiar to council and users alike. We're hoping that this document can provide a complete picture of capital at this point in time. So this is as of August 31st. The next one will be October 31st, and then we will have one for year end 2020. And we will have this document come out quarterly. It has resolution information on it and project status information, variance comments from directors and divisions, and we hope that this has value. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Any questions for Mr. Morrison from council members? Councillor Guerin.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Malosh. Yeah, a couple of questions. One on the project number GG-19-0013, which is our town hall. I know we have in there approved budget of $200,000 for upgrades on the town hall. We've spent 154 and change on that, about 77%. I'm just wondering what we got for that money so far on the town hall. I know it doesn't seem like, I just don't know what 154 would represent the town hall. I haven't been in town hall in a while. And then I have a follow-up to that too, please.
Your Deputy Mayor, that is the purchase of the land adjacent to Town Hall. The remaining funds, we have the consultants who did the facility report a few years ago, coming back to the plan. But the 154 was for the purchase of the land.
Thank you, Director Sweet. Councillor Guerin.
Yeah,
Further?
thanks. Yeah, and I just wanted to make a note and just speak to the many projects I see on here that are marked carry forward to 2021. Now, I know a lot of that is probably to do with COVID. And I know there's some overlapping projects like your fire hall and stuff. But I do see quite a bit of money there. I don't recall seeing this many last year when we were near this time or close to budget. I'm just wondering if this is mostly COVID related, or because I don't see in the next 2 months plus getting a lot of this stuff done. Just wondering why so many carry forward projects. Some are explainable, some I'm scratching my head a little bit on. If anyone could speak to it, thank you.
Through the chair, it's Jeff again. COVID and the pandemic threw a curveball. So yes, a lot of those projects that are carried forward to 2021 are related to the pandemic. As you see, from 2019 to 2020, there was approximately $9 million that was carried forward. So we do usually carry forward a significant amount of projects because they cross over the years, right? As an example, we'll have approximately $10 million that I can think of off the top of my head that will be carried forward related to the fire hall and Carroll Streetscape because the majority of those funds won't be spent. So a lot of the time it is timing related, but yes, COVID definitely threw a curveball to us this year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Guerin. Thank you, Director Morrison. Councillor Bondy.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just want to say that this is definitely where our strengths lay in our municipality, or one of our top strengths is our financial health, financial organization. And I just want to thank Mr. Morrison and his team for bringing this to council. This is, compared to the old style, this is so much more councillor friendly, I would say. And I really appreciate the time and effort into it. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bondi. Councillor Vanderdolen.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, this is a great report. I'm glad we're doing this now. A lot of other towns have done it for a long time in cities, and we need this. It's great. I understand the COVID delays, but I have a specific question about a specific project. That's the fourth dock at Colchester Harbor. Was that also a COVID delay, or was that a high construction price or high bid delay? Thanks.
To Deputy Mayor, no, it was tendered out, but because of delay in getting it, it's not going to be installed until 2021. But it's been tendered, awarded, just the funds won't come out until next year.
Okay, and a follow-up, is that early in the year, mid, late?
Prior to the season, so our goal is to have it in by April 2021.
Okay, thanks, Director Sweet. Councillor Vanderdolen, you're finished? Any further questions from council members? If not, then I need a motion to receive the report. Councillor Guerin and Councillor Bowman, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Next is new business. We do not have any this evening, I don't think. So we go into item 15, notices of motion. And for this, I'm going to pass this over to Mr. Auger to direct us through this. Mr. Auger?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Our first notice of motion was first presented at the last regular council meeting and is being brought forward for council's consideration this evening. As moved by Councillor Bondi, that administration be directed to come back with a diversity training program for council, which includes AODA customer services standard training to ensure council is up to date with requirements under accessibility legislation and the Human Rights Code. Once again, as moved by Councillor Bondi and would require a seconder.
So moved by Councillor Bondi, supported by Councillor Verbeek. Discussion. Councillor Bondi, did you want to go first?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. It kind of goes along with our shared service and recommendations for training for council. And I just think that at my other job, we have training every year around accessibility and AODA standards. And so I recently had it at my other job and it was really good. And I just think that it would be something as elected officials we should have. So a lot of modules you can do by yourself on your own time. You just log in and do it. And it's really just pretty simple. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? I might have a question to Director Sweet in regard to some of this training. I'm not sure who would cover that off, or I don't see anybody from HR. I don't see. So I'm just, or maybe Mr. Nepsy, question, is there something that we already have that could be curtailed, I guess, for this kind of training to council, or I would guess there's something out there already?
You, Deputy Mayor, talk to the manager of HR, as Councillor Bondi. Town administration does have AODA set up, so it's something that she could easily set up through our current system, which could be done online as well.
Thank you, Director Sweet. Councillor Vanderdolen, you had your hand up.
Yeah, a lot of us have gone through this decades ago in the private sector. Is there any reason for us to do it multiple times? I mean, this would be an expense to taxpayers.
Councillor Vanderdolen, you're not looking for an answer. You're just making a general comment, or were you looking for an answer from someone?
I'd like an answer on the cost, especially.
Through the chair, it's Jeff again. I can get that information. The cost would be minimal because we already have the program in place and the trainings in place. So it's all automated through a third-party website, and we use it to keep current. So I think the cost will be minimal, but I will get that information and send it out to you.
Thanks, Mr. Morrison. Councillor Verbeek.
Oh, thank you. Through you, Deputy Mayor. I've never had this kind of training in myself, and I'm not sure if everybody else has, but I'm sure I've been pretty obvious on my willingness and desire to continue to learn. I'm always taking as many workshops and educational opportunities as I can, and I'd be grateful if this was available to us. That's for sure. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments or questions? Councillor Bondy?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I believe I have the last word on the motion because it's my motion, so I don't know if anybody else wants to speak, but.
I think we're all good. Up to you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So there is $25,000 in our budget this year for council wages. If we do have a little bit of cost with training, I believe that this would be beneficial for the people that we represent. Years ago in the private sector is exactly, in my opinion, why we need to bring it up to date. Things change, codes change, social morals change, standards change. So we need to be held accountable. We need to have this training in order to serve our residents. It's code of conduct training. It's facial expressions, and it's not going to cost a lot because it'll be our time, right? It's very insulting and it's very rude. Many of the facial expressions that some counselors do during our meetings. It's insensitive. It's disrespectful, right? Especially those counselors that campaigned on having decorum in the council chambers. So we do have money. We do have a budget for council training as well, right? None of us went to conferences this year, or if we went, we didn't go to a lot of conferences. So we do have money in there. I believe years ago in the private sector is outdated. If some counselors don't want to do it, then they don't want to do it, right? We can't force anybody to do it, but we all should do it. We owe this to our residents. So with that being said, I would like a recorded vote, Deputy Mayor Meloche.
Thank you. And with that, Robert O'Shea, our clerk, I will pass it over to you for a recorded vote.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. On the recorded vote, that administration be direct on the motion as moved by Councillor Bondy, seconded by Councillor Verbeek, that administration be directed to come back with a diversity training program for council, which includes AODA customer services standard training to ensure council is up to date with requirements under accessibility legislation and the Human Rights Code. Councillor Bondy, how do you vote?
Support.
Councillor Vanderdolen, how do you vote?
Support.
Councillor Bowman, how do you vote?
Support.
Deputy Mayor Meloche, how do you vote?
Support.
Councillor Garrett, how do you vote?
Support.
Councillor Verbeek, how do you vote?
Support.
And Councillor Bjorkman, how do you vote?
Support.
So with a recorded vote of 7 in favor, none opposed, the motion carries.
Thank you, everyone. Mr. O'Shea, you have a second notice of motion, I believe.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. We have 2 notices of motion that were added to the adopted agenda this evening as items 15.2 and 15.3 respectively. The first notice of motion for presentment only and coming back for council's consideration at the next regular council meeting. As moved by Councillor Bondy, that the town cover mileage expenses for members of the Committee of Adjustment. And then as 15.3, also a notice of motion for presentment only this evening, coming back to the first meeting in November, as moved by Councillor Bondy, that the town of Essex is strongly opposed to further amalgamation, whereas we feel our residents are best served now by the current model in terms of dollars and cents. And whereas we appreciate the municipal modernization grant and are working hard to ensure our municipal operations are more efficient internally and looking for possible efficiencies externally. And whereas we are opposed to further restructuring in the future, but we are not opposed to sharing some services where our service quality, safety, and price to our residents is not compromised. Once again, that would be coming back to the first meeting in November. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Roger. So item 16 we're on to, and that is reports and announcements from council members. I'm just going to start it the way I see the screen here. I'm going to go with Councillor Joe Guerin. Any announcements?
Not this evening, thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Councillor Guerin. Councillor Bowman.
Just wish everybody a happy Halloween.
Thank you, Mr. Bowman. Councillor Bowman. Councillor Bondy.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Malash. And I just want to do a reminder to residents that many councillors and many businesses in our town have sponsored a hashtag Essex Fall photo at the town gazebo. It's going over quite well. There's quite a big pot of gift cards to win from local businesses. A second announcement is Project Hope is going fairly well. Everything is, there's a lot of uptake. There's a lot of people using it. So that's really good. So if anybody wants to make donations or drop beer bottles off at my front porch, I take them back for Project Hope now. And the third thing that I've been questioning is Town Hall being closed from 11:30 till 1:30 every day for COVID cleaning. That has been something that the residents want us to look into, if we could only be closed for an hour or rotate breaks or clean during the day. Some other municipalities are doing that. So thank you, Deputy Mayor. Great meeting, by the way.
Thank you. Councillor Van der Dolen. Any announcements, comments?
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Not everyone's on Twitter or Facebook, so you might not have seen the town of Essex's communications department advising that people with concerns about broadband internet or internet service take the performance test. I made the suggestion in a meeting about a month ago, and I'm glad to see that our department has taken this and run with it. You go on, it's called www.performance.cira, C-I-R-A, and you can get your speed tested, and it's added to the record, so we'll know which neighborhoods have good service and which don't. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Van der Dolen. Councillor Verbeek.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Malash. Through you, just a quick update this afternoon. Our police service board was able to spend a couple of hours with our police service up at the Manning Road Detachment. Last month, you may have noticed in our police service board meeting, I had requested that we get some updated training for our new members and, update at this with our chief. So he immediately initiated this and brought us all in today. We were able to spend a couple of hours. We got a presentation from our mental health unit. We had the chief present a vast array of all the services that are actually available to us. And then we got to top it off with spending some time with Maximus, our famous, ranked one of the highest in the country canine officers, and his handler. So Councillor Bowman and myself and our deputy CAO was able to spend part of the day with us too. And so that was really helpful. And I just want to thank you, Deputy Mayor, for the meeting tonight. I really appreciated when you went through the correspondence, naming what correspondence we were receiving and supporting it. It helped us move through. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks, Councillor Verbeek. And Councillor Bjorkman. Thank you, Councillor Bjorkman. And I only had one announcement, and that I was going to bring it up about the survey for the internet as well. Councillor Van der Dolen did that, so we can move on. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And we have now item 17, which is bylaws, and I'm going to pass this back to Mr. Auger to read through these as well.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Under bylaws for third reading this evening, we have 1956, being a bylaw to acquire and assume lands for the purpose of dedication as a public highway.
Moved by Councillor Bondy, supported by Councillor Bjorkman. Any questions? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you.
And for you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, also for third reading, 1957, to confirm the proceedings from the October 5th regular council meeting.
Moved by Councillor Bowman, supported by Councillor Verbeek. Any questions? All in favor? That's carried unanimously.
Under item 17.2 is bylaw 1959 for 3 readings this evening. Bylaw 1959 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 224, the bylaw to regulate parking.
Direction from council. Moved by Councillor Bowman, supported by Councillor Bjorkman. Any questions on that bylaw? All in favor? That's carried unanimously. Thank you.
And for 2 readings this evening, bylaw 1960 to confirm the proceedings of this October 19th regular council meeting.
Moved by. Need a hand. Councillor Bjorkman and Councillor Verbeek. Any questions? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So that brings us to the end of our meeting this night, and we're looking for adjournment. Nobody wants to leave. Councillor Guerin and Councillor Verbeek. Any questions on adjournment? All in favor? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, folks, and have a great evening and week. Thank you to our members of the YouTube audience as well for joining us.